Coming up on Network Africa, U.S. airstrike kills 5 militants in Somalia. Floods kill at least 10, affect over 43,000 people in southern Mozambique. Plus, Senegal opposition leader detained as tensions rise ahead of presidential elections. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I'm Anne Nwawado. Today we start in Somalia, where the U.S. says it killed 5 Al-Shabaab fighters during a joint operation with the Somali army. According to the U.S. Command in Africa, AFRICOM, the airstrike was conducted in Bakaduene in central Somalia, about 460 kilometers from the capital, Mogadishu. There has been no reports of civilian casualties. And just yesterday, Somali authorities claimed that they had killed more than 300 Al-Shabaab militants in southern Somalia. It comes as Somali federal troops, backed by the U.S., clan, militia, and African Union troops, continue to counter insurgency against the Al-Qaeda affiliate. This has turned the tide in favor of Somali forces, which have in recent months retaken huge territories from Al-Shabaab. At least 10 people have been killed in southern Mozambique, including the capital, Maputo, after heavy rains unleashed floods over the past few days. Radio France International is reporting over 43,000 people have been affected by the floods. The governor of Maputo province, Julio Parak, is urging flood-prone communities to comply with government evacuation orders or risk being forcibly removed. A flood alert has been issued for the southern Gaza province amid heavy rains. Frequent power outages are making life harder for many South African citizens, forcing many local businesses to brink of bankruptcy. With 11 power generating units at coal plants breaking down in mid-January this year, Eskom imposed its stage 6 load shedding to protect the grid from collapse. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a national state of disaster on February the 8th to address the country's electricity crisis. He said that the state of disaster will enable the country better support businesses in the food production and storage sectors and the retail power chain, with the rollout of generators and solar panels in the efforts to ensure uninterrupted power supply for all of them.
Generators are expensive, that will be able to take care of these 3 shops. Then the diesel is also killing us because now we have to pump diesel every day. And then that's taking all the profits that we're making.
This is very worse. It's very worse because when load shedding is going 8 o'clock, maybe by 12 o'clock, we're going to start to work again. So now it's not right. It's not good for us because some of garage, they are closed.
Senegalese opposition politician Ousmane Sonko was forcibly removed from his vehicle by security forces after his supporters were dispersed by tear gas in a new bout of tension ahead of presidential elections due next year. The incident took place after the postponement of a politically charged trial that may determine Mr. Sonko's eligibility for upcoming presidential elections. Earlier, security forces had used tear gas to disperse about hundreds of Sonko supporters where they were attempting to enter the court in the capital, Dakar. He has been sued by tourism minister named Mane Niang for defamation, insults, and forgery. Mr. Sonko, who's 48, has enjoyed a rapid political rise thanks to part of his popularity with young people. The incidents are coming amid growing tension in the West African country, which has a general reputation for stability in a region where political turbulence is widespread. And let's head to Tunisia, where the president, Kais Saied, has rejected what he terms foreign interference following criticisms over a recent string of arrests targeting his critics. The U.S. had expressed deep concern over the reported arrests, including of politicians, business leaders, and a journalist in recent days. But the president says that he was acting in full respect of the law. He adds, quote, "Tunisia is an independent and sovereign state, not under colonialism or protection, and its sovereignty is above all other considerations." The country has been in deepening political and economic crisis amid protests by Tunisians increasingly frustrated with the economy and against Mr. Said's seizure of near total power. The United Nations mission in South Sudan, Unrest, has reported there was a sharp increase in violence in the country by the end of the last year. Briefing journalists in New York, UN spokesperson for the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, said that the violence was mostly concentrated in the Upper Nile, Warab, and in the Jonglei states. There was also a reported increase in number of civilians harmed during the incident.
Moving to South Sudan and the African continent, the peacekeeping mission in that country, otherwise known as UNMISS, today reported a sharp increase in violence in the country at the end of last year. The violence was mostly concentrated in the Upper Nile, Warab, and Jonglei states. In its quarterly report, the mission said that the number of civilians harmed increased by 87% compared to the same period of last year. Same period in 2021. This rise was accompanied by a disturbing increase in abductions and conflict-related sexual violence, which have gone up by 464% and 360% respectively. The mission called for urgent action by the government to address the escalating violence and to protect civilians in line with international human rights and humanitarian laws.
Deepening security and food crises are likely to dominate the agenda when heads of state convene in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa this weekend for the annual African Union Summit. Armed conflict from West Africa's Sahel and the Horn of Africa in the east and the impact of droughts and floods have all driven ever more Africans from their homes, with the number of displaced people south of the Sahara Desert rising more than 15% over the past year. And that's according to United Nations figures.
The UN estimates 44 million people were displaced in 2022, up from 38.3 million people at the end of 2021 due to increased crisis situations. The International Crisis Group's African Union specialist says that even though the organization has been given a mandate to intervene, they've noted that more cooperation is needed between the AU and regional bodies.
There should be that synergy and comparative advantage of the African Union and organizations and regional organizations like SADC or IGAD and ECOWAS. That is something that we also note in our crisis group report has to be sorted out, and there has to be greater cooperation.
Another major subject of discussion is expected to be worsening hunger in several regions, which has been driven by armed conflict and extreme weather that scientists have linked to climate change. African leaders are also expected to adopt a series of protocols aimed at accelerating full implementation of Africa's new free trade area, under which trading officially began in 2021. Louis Verdrand believes that Africa is still far off from starting the trade due to various border disputes and the limited freedom of movement of people between African Union member states.
So goods can travel, but people can't travel. And, the informal sector is the biggest economic sector on the continent when it comes to trade. So how do you realign those two? So it's still a work in progress. I think that's why this year, there's going to be new steps that are being taken. And these bilateral issues are hopefully going to be addressed within this context where you get African heads of state getting together and discussing it.
In addition to leaders from the 55 AU member states, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and European Council President Charles Michel will attend the summit. African leaders will advocate for permanent seats for the continent on the UN Security Council and among the G20 group of large economies, according to a draft of summit's conclusions.
Let's come back to Nigeria now. In Lagos, the government has announced its plan to deploy a Cessna 406 aircraft for aerial mapping of the state. The state deputy governor, Kadri Hamzat, made this known at an inspection of the aircraft in Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja. He says the exercise will be carried out across the state and will last for about 6 weeks.
This is a Cessna 406 aircraft stationed at the Dominion hangar of the Murtala Mohammed local airport, Ikeja, Lagos. The Lagos State government's team, led by the Deputy Governor, Kadri Hamzat, is here to inspect the aerial survey aircraft for the 2023 mapping and update of the Lagos State spatial data infrastructure for the EGIS project. After the inspection, discussions on how the aircraft will operate is brought to the table by one of the operators.
Basically what it does is it captures images, the still photos, and then it takes obliques, which is all directions, which helps to map the cities and the buildings and show them in 3D models.
The Deputy Governor speaks on why the state is embarking on the project.
It's something that we must be doing regularly because, you know, we live in a dynamic society. In another 10 years, 5 years' time, another plane will fly because things will change. Where we have this building today, it might be another building. So because of that, we need to update it.
For the pilot, the aircraft will fly at 4,500 feet below sea level.
The flight level that we'll be operating will be 4,500 feet above sea level. So it'll be quite high. It's higher than most of the approaches coming into the airport here is at 2,500, so we'll be above that. So it won't be very low. You probably won't even see us, you'll just hear us in the sky.
This technology initiative is to help complete the spatial data and create a sustainable future for Lagos.
For you to have a computerized land cadastral, all land must be mapped and surveyed. So what we're doing now is the mapping. Thereafter, we're going to do survey of parcels, so that we can have our spatial data infrastructure complete.
We're leveraging the power of technology to do it right, to do it accurately, so that it will be beneficial to the citizens of the state.
The Deputy Governor further explains the benefit of the exercise.
International standard practice is you fly every 5 years so that you can update your database and everything. So basically what it does is you are able to map every inch of soil in your land. You are able to match all the various buildings where they had their location and sizes, everything. So the essence is to know the details of your state.
The Cessna aircraft has been deployed to update the Lagos database, and residents are advised not to panic at the sight of the aircraft when it's lowered within their neighborhood to get shots.
Thank you very much.
Still ahead on the program when we return on our Africa Tech segment. Nigerian government seeks to harness tech talents in national robotics competition. We'll bring you the details in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. And on African Tech, STEM learning has been gaining attention as the next big thing in the field of education. And this is because there will always be new technologies transforming the way we do things. Hence the need to keep an eye on the younger generation known for their innovative ideas so they can help build our digital economy.
Robo Phantom from Vivian Fowler.
Represented in this hall are 12 teams from 5 schools in Lagos State, including a team from the National Library in Yaba. They're waiting to participate in the first National Robotics Competition holding at the Vivian Fowler Memorial College for Girls. The main competition is in Abuja, the nation's capital, but for safety reasons, Vivian Fowler Memorial College for Girls is co-hosting the contest within its premises for Lagos schools.
The beauty about FIRST is that you are learning to collaborate, you're learning marketing, you're learning IT, you're learning so many other skills. And the place for you to harness those skills is in a competition like this.
The theme for this 2022-2023 Youth Robotics season is Energize, challenging teams to reimagine the future of sustainable energy and power their ideas forward. And representatives of the Lagos State Government have a brief interaction with the students.
This is only going to help them up their skills in a lot of ways. First of all, artificial intelligence, can be used to solve a myriad of problems. And we want our children to be problem solvers, to be creative, to be critical thinkers. We want them to be able to reflect on performance and keep learning, to be lifelong learners. So this is part of their journey.
I think this competition is really a worthwhile one. It helps, number one, encourage students to go into the areas of science, technology, engineering, math. But more importantly, it helps us to identify young, promising students that are able to contribute positively in the area of robotics to economic development.
From the hall, the students go into the interview room to present their innovation project and robot design to a panel of judges for both the first Lego League and first Tech Challenge.
Since the beginning of this season, we have been working tirelessly to finish our robot for the competition. But aside from that, our team also focuses on trying to build the skill set of the different members, on whether it be programming, building, thinking outside the box. So we're more than just a team that does competition.
This season, we went for a more innovative and creative design when designing our robot, because over the past seasons, we've had limitation of parts, we've had to acquire different projects, we've had to raise money, we've had to do so many things for the improvement of our team.
The first Energize season for 2023 will see students build robots to complete tasks and create innovative, real-world solutions.
Well, joining us now via Zoom is co-founder STEM Met's Resources, Jadisola Adedeji. She's speaking to us from Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us, Mrs. Adedeji, on the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right, let's begin now. From the report played, which you just saw now, the number of children interested in STEM learning, and this is just one competition, so there are even more across the country. Why is it that we don't hear of how government representatives attend these events to scout for the brightest minds, for example?
Well, I think it's because, one, we're a huge country. Two, there's so many things, so many little things going on in different parts of the country. And three, it really depends on whether there's enough interest in the state government, to be honest, in encouraging and coming alongside a lot of these students. I know Lagos State, for one, are quite keen. There's a department that specializes in STEM education and trying to promote that among schools. So I think you'll find that it's actually a local thing. And oftentimes, if there's interest from the government level, you'll find that there's a deeper level of participation within the states.
Our tech talents, as we've noticed, are trained locally, most of them in Nigeria, within the country, but they end up working for startups and even companies abroad because of better money, better pay, better opportunities. What do you think is the solution here?
Well, I actually think it needs to come from the top. If there's a national policy that realizes that digital economy contributes to the overall
I guess we'll get Mrs. Jadisola Adedeji, if we can, before the end of the program. We'll definitely get her to continue to talk about STEM education. Meanwhile, the women-only village of Umoja in Kenya's Rift Valley is a haven for those who have escaped gender-based violence, including rape and female genital mutilation, which is common among the local Sumbaturu tribe. When the advocacy was met with hostility, matriarch of the village, Rebecca Lolusoli, left her community with 16 other women to form Umoja village, which is now thriving, self-sufficient community.
The thorny trees and dawn-caked homes of Umoja village make it resemble another in Kenya's northeastern Samburu region, except in one key detail, the absence of men. Since it was established over 30 years ago, Umoja has provided a refuge for women from the Samburu community and beyond. Women fleeing from female genital mutilation, domestic abuse or child marriage. 26-year-old Christine Sitian, a mother of 4, says her husband assaulted her physically before she escaped.
I went through a hard time. I was being mistreated and did not have rights. And my children were not allowed to go to school. Now, I am proud to be a mother.
Losing hope in the relationship, she first tried to return to her home village, but the cattle used as a dowry to secure her marriage had been stolen. Co-founder of the village, Jane Nomuken, says that her mission is to ensure that girls are not forced into early marriage with older men. She believes girls should be allowed to choose their husbands. The women make and sell ornaments to buy food and send their children to school.
Well, let's go back to our African tech. We have the co-founder, STEM Mets Resources, Jadisola Adedeji. You're back. All right. So you were talking about how talents end up abroad because of better opportunities, and we're talking about the solution here.
Yeah, I was saying that it really needs to come from the top. If we have national policies that encourages, and provides opportunities, then you'll find more of our talents staying. And I think a lot of this is really supporting the private sector. The private sector is allowed to develop and have incentives, then they'll be able to create more jobs. So to me, that seems to be the obvious thing, but I think there needs to really be something that comes from the top that will help encourage job creation. And I think you'll find that a lot of our talent will stay if the economic environment is really supportive of them. Otherwise, as we're seeing, there's a lot of brain drain happening, unfortunately.
As someone who works closely with children interested in science and tech, what would you say are the challenges they face?
I think for the children, again, it's the opportunity. You see in your caption there that there was a handful relative to the population of children, school-age children in Nigeria. You can see that it's only a handful that have access to the opportunity to even learn and train. So if it becomes a national policy in terms of our educational expectation, that every Nigerian child is expected, or it's in there in our syllabus, for them to be exposed, then you'll find that there's more impact and there's more reach. So if on the federal level, if there's an overhaul of our curriculum to really take on more 21st century methods of learning and teaching, I think we'll find that generally there will be a mindset shift in our education policies as well. So a lot of private sector businesses are in the STEM field, like myself. So a lot of us are trying to ensure that children get this exposure. But of course, we're only a handful relative to the population and relative to what needs to be done. So us coming alongside government in an attempt to even scale some of the services that we offer to these children is key. But oftentimes we're met with, there's no budget for that. So the budget that's allocated to education in itself is a huge problem. I think probably only 0.2% is applied, which is a problem.
All right, thank you very much. Co-founder, STEM Mets Resources, Jadisola Adedeji. Thank you for your time on Network Africa, and well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This is where we draw the curtains on Network Africa for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawodo. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.